Hello everyone, Minute Plus Meditation here, Friday, June the 10th. First Kings, so Elijah is experienced after all of this incredible confrontation with the 400 prophets of Baal and confronting Ahab the king, he is experiencing human fear. I mean, Elijah was a man, he was a human person. So Jezebel had said she was going to basically rip him apart, murder him brutally, and he gets frightened and he runs. So God calls him, and there's a magnificent encounter with the Lord here. Probably you've heard this many times. Okay, so there is the powerful experience of the wind, the earthquake, the fire, not in any of these. Although God could very well have been in these, as he has been in the past. And after these, and after the fire, a sound of sheer silence. When Elijah heard it, he wrapped his face in his mantle and went out and stood at the entrance of the cave. And this is where God was experienced in the sheer, small, still voice. Again, there's so many things that could be understood by this, but basically, God is in all those powerful effects, the earthquake, the powerful wind, the powerful rain, the powerful fire. But God is also in this small, still voice. And the power of silence is so important for us. And so God reassures Elijah in this encounter. And he also basically sets up what we call succession. So he tells Elijah basically, your time is coming to an end. Not exactly over yet. You got to pick a successor, and he names a successor. It's going to be Elisha, another great prophet. But see, it sets in motion this idea of succession. Prophetic succession will lead to Davidic succession, will lead to apostolic succession. This idea of succession will be in the church. So when we talk about the successor of Peter, it just doesn't come out of nowhere. It goes back to the prophets, it goes back to the kings. Succession is critical. Otherwise, it's a one generation, it's a one-off, right? So God is not typically he's not into one-offs. God establishes a family, and families have succession. So listen for God in the small, still voice, not in the great drama, the great things of life and so on. He can be found there, like in the noise of a city, but God needs to be really discerned in the quiet. So many of us fear the quiet because we're just bombarded and saturated with noise, and we need to ask the Lord to help us be purified of that. Okay, over to the gospel. Jesus said to his disciples, you have heard it was said, you shall not commit adultery, but I say to you that everyone who looks at a woman with lust has already committed adultery with her in his heart. And then if your eye causes you to sin, and so on. So again, each of these could be, a talk unto itself. But essentially what our Lord is getting at here is what we would call the virtue of purity, the purity of heart. Purity of heart, mind, soul, and body. But it starts in the heart. And our sexuality is something like, this is my little image, it's something like a nuclear power plant. Most people are familiar with nuclear power. It's not a pro-nuclear, anti-nuclear thing here, but we're familiar with nuclear power. It's enormous power. If nuclear power has proper protocols and safeguards, it can light up a city, maybe even light up a province or a state. And if those protocols are followed, and kept up and maintained and revisited and so on, it can do enormous good. If they're not followed, if they're allowed to deteriorate, then it can melt down and destroy a city. And that's what our sexuality can do. It can actually serve a great good. It calls us to go outside of ourselves. It can help us to integrate our faculties, our energies for the service ultimately of God and of others and of self. Or it can burn everything down. It can lead us away from God. It can lead us to destroy others. And it can lead us to destroy ourselves through narcissistic acts. It can, bombard our mind with impure thoughts and so on. This is just, filthy stuff. So we need to ask our Lord to help us to be clean and pure of heart. It's not a bad thing. It's actually a good thing. Think of the nuclear power plant. It lights up a city. It can do so much good. So much can happen with all that light and electricity, but it's got to serve the good. It's got to be maintained. It's got to have protocols. It's got to have, certain agreements, as it were. And these things, all of these things are in line with God's will. So today, ask Jesus to help you be clean of heart. God bless you.